I don't know how can someone have such a black heart, or how can someone be so inhuman just for money. You're risking the lives of, there were babies on the boats.
I'm so excited to talk to you today because The Swimmers, the movie made about your life and your story, is so powerful. And I think everyone needs to watch this movie. But
You do.
for you personally, how difficult was it to watch it back for you when you watched it?
The first time I watched it with my sister and Sven, I think you know him now from the movie, my coach, it was really emotional, and it was kind of made me happy too when I watched it. It wasn't like just crying and being sad about everything that happened. It just reminded me of everything that I went through, because you know, you don't just wake up every day and be like, oh, I went through hardship or whatever. You just move on with life. This movie packed everything together for me, and I was like, oh wow, we went through a lot. Like, I never thought of it that way, but it was really, really emotional, yeah.
What was the bit you maybe reflected on the most watching it back?
I honestly reflected on my relationship with my sister before. Like, it was not about whether it was better or not. It was just these moments of us living in the same apartment with our little sister, and we had like a pet cat. In the movie it was a bird, but we had a cat. Her name was Lulu. My mom and my dad, and just I was like really, really happy with my family and my sister. It changed a bit now, not because we don't love each other anymore, but because we grew up. Each one of us went their own way. We followed our ambitions and dreams, so it made me a bit sad.
But it's also growth, isn't it? At the
Yeah,
end of the day, like,
of course.
you're also looking back at your life when you were a teenager.
Yeah.
And I'm not hanging around with my parents as much anymore.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
exactly.
It's a very normal process,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. But my sister has been like a huge part of my life, so and she always will be. So that we were kind of, if it makes sense, like the media made this also, build this wall between me and her, where they were always calling her the sister of, and she has her own personality, she has her own story. This movie finally shows that her story is equally as important as mine, and that she did something, to be honest, in my opinion, way more important than what I did. She went back to the point where we got on Lesbos, and she volunteered and helped refugees in person, and she was translating and helping like younger refugees and so on. And I just felt it was unfair towards her that the media was like the sister of Yusra Mardini. She was like, I have my own identity. Like, literally, I've been the one who's copying her whole life, so it was not fair.
Yeah. And I think let's take it back to the beginning for you, when you were living in Syria. And I think what was so powerful about the movie is it showed just how normal everything was for you, and then there was this snap, and it all changed.
Yeah.
When do you think was the last like normal day for you? What was that like?
I still remember, to be honest, the first thing I heard ever about war was in the school bus. I always got picked up by the school bus at like 7 a.m. And then we went to school. School was at 8, and at that point we were going back from school, and then we heard about this event of like kids being hit by the teacher or something like that. It was just a story. It wasn't it had nothing to do with a war, and it was in Dara. So it kind of like after that, from that point, it escalated, and it became where people started, going to the street to demonstrate, and then it became bigger and bigger, and the war started, and just like the point where like I had nothing basically anymore. I was in Russia for an event that was called the Children of Asia. It was just an event, like swimming event. So I was there. Then when I came back, the suitcase that I had like packed for this competition was the last thing I've ever gotten from our apartment with my family. I had like all the toys were gone, or the pictures of me being a child were gone. Everything was just gone, and like we were ripped basically from like our home. And that was the moment where I was like, wow, like what's happening? And then we started living by my grandma, we started living by my aunt, we started going from apartment to apartment, like where the rent was getting more expensive and more expensive. So it came to us brutally. And then like the cottage of water and electricity. We couldn't shower in warm water for ages. And then again, in the pool, I had to train in a really cold water. And you see, that's what I meant. Like, I never think of those things if I don't have interviews and so on. And right now I'm like, oh, wow. Like, a lot has happened, yeah.
And then you made the very difficult decision with your family that you were going to make the journey from Syria to Turkey and then board the boat.
I'm not very sure if they were. Like, they'd really made the decision, because me and my sister did. We saw that, like, lots of refugees in 2015 were leaving. Lots of teenagers were leaving to Europe in hopes of, like, they're minors. I'll bring my parents, you know what I mean? Because we didn't want our parents to go through the journeys that we went through, because we were young, we were naive. We could do that. We could run, we can hide. But I would have never let or allowed my mom or little sister to... for them to go through that, of course, and that's why we wanted to go through it and then bring them, which never works. Like, I know my cousin, as example, is in Germany since 7 years now, and he has a newborn sister he never met. No, he did not see his dad or mom since 7 years now. So unfortunately, that's the reality of it now. And we made the decision after so many things, like so many things has happened, and then we were like, you know, can we risk one more trip and maybe live a really good life until we're gone? Or are we going to suffer for the next maybe 40, 50 years of our life? We don't know how long the war could take, you know. Maybe next year, maybe the next 10 years. And the war in Syria has been going on for 11 years now. So, and then my dad was like, I think in a moment of like weakness, he said, find someone I can trust and I'll let you go. And that someone was his cousin. And he was 25 years old, and his other cousin was also the same age as me. He was 17 at the time, and we left with them.
And then you get labelled with this title of being a refugee, which I imagine is quite a difficult thing to go through.
Yeah.
How did that feel when you were first reconciling with that idea of being a refugee?
Honestly, in the beginning, it was frustrating, because first of all, the worst thing is that I wasn't educated about what a refugee is. I also had a misconception, and I also grew up in a country where a refugee is something bad. You see in the movie, my dad is like, you're going to start for the Refugee Olympic team? Like, really? People do think very negatively of what a refugee is and what happened to them, or these ideas of a refugee should dress poorly, they are poor, they come from... Is Syria a desert? Where is it? And I'm like, you know, we have the oldest capital in the world. You should know that. Oh, and honestly, even when I accepted the role of like being a part of the Refugee Olympic team, I didn't really fully accept it until I was walking at the opening ceremony, entering the stadium, realizing that like thousands and millions around the world had respect for me and for this team, and they really had this hope that this team can bring hope to other refugees around the world or other people. It was very, very inspiring and made me realize, okay, it's not only your journey anymore. You have this responsibility of representing millions around the world. The media was calling me the face of refugees and all of that. I was just 18. So
it's a lot of pressure.
It was a lot. But I think, again, younger people have this naive side of them where like, I can take it all, I can make it all. But yeah, I slowly accepted it and was like, you know what, why don't I embrace it? Why don't I show who I really am? It doesn't matter if I'm a refugee or not. I will just keep doing what I do, which is swimming. I love fashion. I love entertainment. So I'll keep doing that, and I'll start advocating for refugees, and that's exactly what I did. And here we are.
Yeah. And I think what's so powerful at the movie is it does show the microaggressions that you received when you first landed in Greece. For you, what have been some like moments of prejudice that you faced as a refugee that really shocked you and surprised you?
One of the things that really, really shocked me is the smugglers. Like, knowing you're a human being, you know that you putting 20 people on a dinghy in the middle of the sea, they can die. And he knows probably that some boats he let off flipped and people died. And I don't know how can someone have such a black heart, or how can someone be so inhuman just for money, you're risking the lives of. There were babies on the boats. There were children on the boats. So that's one thing. The second thing, we were on the way to Europe, like we dressed up as Europeans and got on the train to fake and get from Hungary to Germany. And then this lady saw us. She told on us, so we were arrested. And then it took a while for the police to come for the next step. So when she told on us, we didn't know that she told on us, so we were sharing food. And then we were sharing food with her too. And then she started crying. She said, I didn't know you guys are good people. And I was like, too late, but yeah, thanks. And in general, just how inhuman we were treated on the way. Like you kind of have some kind of disease that no one want to touch you or want to be associated with you. In Hungary, we were surrounded like we are criminals. There was a circle around Kalati station where all the refugees were staying because we had to sleep on the floor. So the police surrounded us like we're some type of criminals. You weren't allowed to go in or out. Yeah, but in general, just how inhuman and how crazy the misconception is about what a refugee is. No one knows that you spend 10,000 euros to get to Europe. No one knows that. And no one knows that you have to pay the guy that is sending you off to literally drown, maybe. You have to pay like a dingy. Each person pays 1,500. So they're making a living out of you. And I cannot really believe that politicians know nothing about that. That's just, and it's all disappointing to me.
Because I think it's very difficult because we're in this situation now where we even live in a country where, for instance, they want to send refugees to Rwanda, which is unbelievable. And to live in a country that has that much prejudice towards a group of people who are escaping persecution, so many different things. For you, when you hear stories like that, how does that make you feel? And what would you want to say to those kind of policymakers who are trying to push that kind of policy through?
Honestly, it makes me really, really disappointed. Look, Great Britain was also built by refugees. A huge part of, the community here. And it's you cannot tell me there's a country in the world where it's just native. That does not exist. This misconception that they created for us is just to divide people. That does not happen, does not exist. The refugee, when they're gonna come to this country, they just want a safe place. They're the ones who are going through the hardship and not you. What changes for you if refugees come here? Nothing. Nothing changes for you. Maybe you have a few more people that come. I'm not saying all refugees are good, but are all people good all around the world? No, that's just the nature of human being. And you can't just say 100% of those refugees are bad and 100% are good. It does not work that way. So I think refugees should be given a chance to come here, to be integrated, to learn the language. And I really hope that the success stories are more told than the ones that are not successful, because also the media always takes it to the negative side where, look at Syria, it's all destroyed and damaged. That's why I love the scene where me and my sister are dancing on the rooftop.
That's such a powerful scene.
When you see that's one of my favorite scenes, where you see the bombing, but we're still here. We're still trying to live. And that's exactly, a refugee, when they come to Europe, we're really, really trying to just be safe. When I come here, I'm just thinking about, I just don't want to live in a country where I have to think about, am I going to come alive? Am I going to come back home or not? I don't want my mom to cry her eyes out every time I went out because she doesn't know if I'm going to come back. And I always say, it's not bad if a refugee comes here, gets successful, live a luxurious life. They work hard. That's also okay. It's not like something that written in a book where refugees shouldn't be successful, or we shouldn't live a luxurious life. Or if they want, go for it, work hard for it, and you're fine. And I think lots of people are afraid that refugees are taking the money or the jobs or whatever. And I'm like, if you're good at your job, no one's going to take it from you.
No one's coming for your
job. Whether a refugee or not,
Yeah.
So it's my own opinion. And for politicians, I really, really hope that they understand that they can really change a lot about this topic, and that opening the way for new refugees will not hurt the country. It will, nourish the country and push it further. And, change is always good.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And your success story
Thank
is
you.
so phenomenal.
Thank you.
Like the level of determination, the perseverance, the ambition, the mental strength that you had to go through what you went through and push through and make it to the Rio Olympics is just extraordinary. I think it's one of the most powerful stories there is about human determination. What do you think you've learned about determination from that experience?
I learned from two incredible parents. My dad went through a lot being a swim coach, where every time he taught the athletes how to be such good athletes, the national team will see that they're good and take them from him. So he just trained generations to be the amazing athletes, and then they would be taken from him. So he would start from zero again. He would work with new athletes every few months, and that determination just showed me that I should be the same. And he really taught me a lot about never giving up, working hard whether you like it or not. If you have a goal, if you have a vision. Sometimes he would I'd be sleeping, he'd be like, wake up, we're going to training. I'm like, no. He's like, stop crying, we're going. So I learned, of course it was harsh, it's his daughter, of course he had pain waking me up and so on, but he always thought of the vision and where we're going, the Olympics and everything, and I learned that from my dad.